My name's Peter Cox. I'm curator of the Beatles in Australia exhibition here at the Powerhouse Museum. We're putting this exhibition together with Arts Centre Melbourne, and I've been working on it for nearly a year now. But in fact, the idea came to us about 3 years ago when we realised that in 2014 it would be 50 years since the Beatles toured Australia, and what a good idea it would be to do an exhibition about the impact of that very significant event on Australia in the 1960s. And we got together with Arts Centre Melbourne because they're a fantastic performing arts museum, but also they have a wonderful collection centred around this tour of Australia that the Beatles embarked on in 1964. They have the archive of the promoter of that tour, Ken Brodziak. So we're doing something quite different in this exhibition by using archival material to try and tell the story of how this tour was planned and managed. There's a lot of really interesting documents that we're going to display. What we do in museums when we present an exhibition is telling a story using objects and other media. The other media include images, audio-visual, sound, and the whole design of the space to kind of present a narrative. And we are presenting the story of how this Beatles tour came about, a little bit about what Australia was like before the Beatles tour, how the tour was managed, what happened in each of the 4 Australian cities where the Beatles appeared, the absolute avalanche of Beatle merchandise that happened in 1964, and the impact of the Beatles tour on Australia. So we kind of set up the story first and then looked for objects and other media to illustrate that story. So apart from the magnificent Arts Centre collection and objects in the Powerhouse Museum collection, we then tried to establish contact with private collectors and fans who had material that might illustrate this story too. And just through putting the word out, we managed to track down just a small number of really fantastic collectors who were willing to lend their objects for this exhibition. So I guess I would go and visit people, see what they had, talk to them about whether they wanted to lend items, and then kind of looking at the available material, working all these objects into a narrative, and in that way deciding which of the items we could use, that we eventually would use, that fit into the story. There's a lot of really good things that we could have added to this exhibition, but we wanted to keep the storyline tight and only include material that was relevant to the narrative that we were creating. Three-dimensional objects tend, to have more appeal to the eye, and they certainly look nicer in an overall aesthetic sense when you walk into the space. I mean, asking an exhibition designer to display dozens and dozens of documents is a real challenge for them, but I'm proud to say that Malcolm McKernan and his team have really responded to that challenge. But we do have some fantastic three-dimensional objects. Much of it is the merchandise that was around in 1964. There was an avalanche of Beatle products in 1964. Some people say that the Beatles manager allowed the indiscriminate licensing, which resulted in products that some regarded as not quite appropriate. Let's face it, there's a lot of kitsch, but today Beatle collectors love the kitsch. In fact, an item of Beatles vintage merchandise that's in good condition with its packaging, they fetch a lot of money, and so we've been fortunate through various collections to be able to put together a display that shows the breadth of Beatle merchandise in 1964. I mean, there's wallpaper, there's Beatle tea towels, there's Beatle wigs, there's Beatle dresses, Beatle shirts, there's Beatle wallets, there's Beatle board games. The range is quite incredible, and so we're hoping people will be quite amused when they look at the range of Beatle products.